the Shattered Star Quilt along. In this section, what I wanted to do is go over how to attach binding to your quilt. This was a scary step in the quilt making journey for me when I first started, so I thought I'd walk you through how I go about attaching it. Now, if you don't know how to make quilt binding, I have a full blog post that walks you step by step on how to know how many strips to cut, how to attach those strips, and then I show you pictures on how to attach it to your quilt, but I'm going to show it to you today in action. Before we dive in though, I wanted to walk you through all of the tools that you'll need to tackle attaching binding to your quilt. Obviously you're going to need your completed Shattered Star quilt. You're also going to need to have it already trimmed up, squared up. So if you missed that video, go back to the previous video so you can see how to trim up your quilts, because you definitely want it nice and squared up before you even start attaching your binding. You're going to need your binding already prepared. I've just rolled it so it's nice and neat. You're also going to need a small ruler. You can use a smaller one than this. I just, throughout this quilt along, I've been using only a few rulers so that you guys can follow along at home and not feel like you have to go out and buy every single ruler. For the longest time, this is the size that I've used when I've been making my binding, so I'll use that today. You're also going to need a marking tool. This is just a friction marker. You can use a pencil, you can use a washable marker, it's up to you. You're going to need your sewing machine, you're going to need your walking foot, and you're also going to need some thread. So I am attaching my binding with 50 weight orifil thread in color 2000. The color 2000 is what I pieced the entire quilt with. And then I had quilted it in 40 weight orifil thread in color 24, 25, I believe. So I'm just coming back to my regular piecing thread just because that's what I've been using in the project, and it will coordinate just fine with this. And that is all you need. Oh, you will also need your ironing board, and you will need a rotary cutter just for the last final bit, and you may need a pin to help you kind of hold things together at the very end. So I've got my pins here, and aside from that, I think we're good to go. Let's dive in. Okay, so I'm all set up at my sewing machine. I just want to let you guys know that I still have my walking foot on, and I've put my stitch length to 2.0. I was stitching with 3.0 when I was quilting, so just make sure you drop that back down. So what I'm doing is I'm leaving a tail about, I don't know, 10 inches or so, just to give me room at the end to join the two ends together. If you don't leave enough room, you're going to have to unpick your stitches and it will be really tough to join them. So I just recommend leaving a good amount of space there. So I just line up my the raw edge of my binding with the raw edge of my quilt, which is why we took our time to square her up nicely. So now we don't even have to think about straight edges. We know they're straight. I have my binding just rolled up next to right next to my needle here. I have enough room on my Juki to kind of sit her there, so that works nicely. And now we're just going to start stitching. So when you start off, just do remember to back stitch at the beginning and end to make sure you lock in those stitches. All right, and away we go. All right, so I'm coming up to my first corner. At this point, I stop. I grab my marking tool. I grab my ruler, and I'm just gonna line it up along the, so I'm using the straight edge of my ruler here, and lining up the 1/4 inch line here on the bottom edge of that new line that I'm going to be coming down in a second. So 1/4 inch line here, straight edge here, and then I mark a line at the 1/4 inch mark in from the top. This is my guide as to where I'm going to stop. And you'll see what I do at once I get there. So we're going to continue stitching. And I'm going to stop right in where I made that mark. I'm going to lift my presser foot. I'm going to spin the quilt a little bit, drop my presser foot back down, and quilt off of, stitch off of my quilt. I'm going to lift my presser foot. I'm going to spin my quilt so that the new edge is facing me. I'm going to take my loose binding. I'm going to flip it up at a 90-degree angle, like so. Yep, like so. And then I'm going to finger press, and then I'm going to take this bit and I'm going to flip it back down over itself. So I've got the nice fold and I'm flipping it back over itself, making sure I'm lining up this edge, making sure I'm lining up the top edge, and making sure that this is nice and lined up on this side too. Once I have it nicely lined up, I'm going to bring it back under my foot and drop my presser foot. And I'm going to take a couple stitches. I like to back stitch here a little bit. It's not necessary, but I do it. And then we're going to continue. And I'm going to continue doing that until I have all 4 sides, and I'll come back and show you how I join the 2 ends. Okay, so I've attached binding to all of the sides, and I'm left with these tail bits that need to be joined. So here's where we started, and this is the tail that we left loose. And here's some of the excess of where I'm coming in from. So you'll notice I left myself some slack so that it just makes it easier for me to work. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to lay your starting strip where you started your binding, lay it flat. I like to put this on my cutting mat just so that I can get a nice alignment with one of the lines on my board. And I'm lining it up with one of these horizontal lines here so that I know where I'm starting. This is important because you're going to take your second strip and you're going to then lay it on top of your first strip. But what you want to do is you want to double check how much you're overlapping by. However wide you've cut your binding, for me I've gone 2.5 inches wide, then you want to overlay those 2 bits 2.5 inches. If you've cut your binding strips 2.25 inches, then you'd overlay by 2.25 inches. Once you've done that, overlaid them and made sure that they're nice and smooth, you want it nice and flush with your quilt. No loosey-gooseys. Then I'm just going to measure, my head's not in your way, so I'm going to measure 2.5 inches in and make sure that I've got those overlapped. I just want to make sure that I've got 2.5 inches overlapped before I take my cut, like so. So this is the excess. Now what I'm gonna do, what I wanna do is open these up. So I wanna take the left one, open it up. I wanna take the right one and place them right sides together like so. All right, so you wanna lay them on top of one another. Laying them on top of one another, then you're gonna gently place your ruler, without moving anything, and come in and draw a line from corner to corner. And then I just like to pop a pin in there just to keep everything together as I bring it to the sewing machine. And then all I'm gonna do is sew directly on that line, trim 1/4 inch away, snip, snip, and then press my seam open and then continue stitching it down. That's all there is to it. Okay, so I've sewn right on that line. Now I'm just going to use my ruler to trim away trim away the excess, and then I'll press that seam open just to keep things nice and flat and less bulky. So now I'm just going to set my seams, press it open, and I'll show you the last little bit. Okay, so you can see how I've joined that seam. This is just the previous one, so they've now been joined. Now you can see how I've got this gap here. I'm just gonna tack it down. That's all there is to it. That is attaching binding to your quilts. To know how to, then you're just gonna flip it obviously to the other side, right? And then you'll tack it down on the back. Now you can do it either by machine, you can do a blind stitch, you can do a big stitch, hand quilting. I've got a couple of different blog posts that I'll link to so you can see different options on how you can finish it on the front. But that's how you attach binding to your quilt. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave them in the comment box down below. I'm always happy to help you guys out. And if you found any of the tips helpful or you learned something new, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future tutorials. Have a good one.